on 105.3 FM in New Orleans. This show's entrance has been edited, produced, and directed by Gwen Clapper from Perfect Trust Productions, LLC. You can find us at perfecttrustproductions.com.
Hello and happy new year, everyone, and welcome to Horsefly Chronicles Radio, to Monday night segment of Horsefly Chronicles Radio with myself, Julia Syracusa, and Philip Syracusa. We're broadcasting live from the International Public Radio and the United Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 FM from New Orleans. This evening's show is fully sponsored by Carnation, so we want to thank them for their sponsorship. We love them. We'll have to do a few things in order to participate. Go over to the YouTube channel, UFO Paranormal Radio or International Public Radio. You can also go into all of the Facebook stations, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, UFO Undercover with Joe Montaldo, News on the Flip Side, also Twitch, SoundCloud, Podbeam. Also go over to our group, Horsefly Chronicles Radio, and join if you haven't. And if you have any questions for our guests, please ask. So thank you, girls, for coming on tonight. So we want to welcome to the show Ms. Robin Ramsey and Katie Peak. Robin is the scientific director for Uni Research based out of Albany, New York. Katie is the chief investigator officer for Uni Research. They are both paranormal investigators. Together, they form an amazing team for Paranormal Puzzle. You can find them on PowerFlix. So please, let's welcome them to the show. Yay!
Thank you.
Welcome, ladies.
Hi. So nice to see you girls again.
It's really good to see you too.
So how was your new year?
I can't hear Kate. But I actually didn't do anything. I stay at home. I've been doing that for a few years. There's a lot of reasons to stay home now, but I stayed home and relaxed. I did manage to stay up until the ball dropped, though. It was difficult.
Well, you did. Well, that's more than we could say for us.
Yeah.
We can't hear Katie though. So
Katie, can you hear us?
Mic is muted. But you would think that paranormal investigators are really great at staying up all night. We're not. I'm not. There she is.
Okay, there you go. You there, Katie?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
There you go. Great.
Yes.
All right.
Goodness.
Great.
Hi.
I was going to say, New Year's was quiet. Thank God.
Well, we always like to ask our guests how you got started within paranormal because it's one of our favorite topics. And whoever wants to go first, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started. And we're going to take it from there and then go forward with a lot of questions. We had the pleasure of meeting both of you, and then we were very impressed with the work that you do. So, and it's different too. It was different than a lot of other teams.
I want to really get into that.
So whoever wants to go first, tell us your first paranormal experience, what age. We always want to go back to the age as well.
I'll go first. I can't remember a time that I don't think I was having experiences. I just didn't understand what they were. I remember being, 5, 6, 7 years old, and I'd hear, I'd wake up in the morning and I'd smell bacon cooking. I would hear people talking in the downstairs of my home, and I would open the door and I'd walk down fully expecting to see my entire family and, eggs and bacon, and it would be completely silent and there wouldn't be anything. And, I'd be in a room and I'd swear somebody walked by and I'd go out and be like, Mom, did you call me? Did you need me? And she's like, I literally just walked in the door. And it seemed like no matter where I went, different homes, different states, different counties, I would always have these experiences. One of the ones that really solidified for me a different world was the last home that I lived in, kind of before I bought this one. We called him the farmer, and my son was very, very little. And I just remember looking down our stairs and seeing this big gentleman in overalls, white hair, and, just a cowboy hat walk from our kitchen into our bathroom. And there was nowhere for him to go. So I was like, I've got this person. They've broken in my home. I'm going to get them. And I went flying down the stairs and jumped into the bathroom. And there was no one there. And I was like, I know what I saw. You're not going to tell me otherwise. And when I did some research on the property from the owners, they're like, oh yeah, that was my dad. He was a farmer on this land. And I went, well, he's still here. And things like that had always happened. I just didn't understand what they were. And I had watched the shows as a teen and always was very interested, but I never thought I'd get into it. And one day I was watching TV, John Griffin's face popped up on this TV, and I said, there's no way this man lives where I live. And I messaged him on Instagram and was like, hey, do you really live in Schenectady? Like, is this real? And he's like, yep, born and raised, grew up here. And I said, that's awesome. I live here too. Started a great friendship, and he asked me to be part of the team, and there was no looking back. And I met Robin, and the three of us, this is where I say thank God for the pandemic, because we met through Zoom. So the first interaction I had with them was their faces. There was no phone calls. It was literally pop up, let's have a conversation, let's see each other. And it felt like talking to two friends that I just hadn't seen in 20 years. It wasn't weird. It wasn't uncomfortable. It just felt like we clicked instantly. And the more we do together, the more we click. And it feels like when the three of us aren't together, there's a little piece of you missing.
Yes. Wow.
I agree with all of that. Everything that you said, I feel so good right now. But I feel the same way. Like, it was one of those, like, we're instant friends, like, you've known someone forever. I completely agree with that. And for me, I began like seeing things and like very young, like 3 years old. And of course, your parents just say you're imagining things, that sort of thing. But I think what really got me into the field, if I'll just like jump forward, because I lived in very haunted houses growing up, especially one in particular. But what made me actually decide to research and study and work hard at what we do is in 1997, my oldest brother was actually murdered. Okay, a violent murder in Waco, Texas. And it was shortly after that someone had the nerve to say to me, wow, your brother was murdered. He's stuck right. His soul is going to be stuck right where he was killed. And I was like, this can't be right. This can't be right. That's not going to work, because he was, killed in the street, in the middle of a street, in not a great neighborhood. And I thought, well, this can't be his eternity. This doesn't seem right. I'm going to find out for myself. So not only was it completely disturbing that someone would say something like that to me, but it was, in the long run, the catalyst for me putting together a group, starting to really study how to try to figure it out. And then it drew me directly to the science aspect of it. It really did. I started pretty early on using the equipment that we had at hand at the time, and which wasn't much. And so I decided that I would start inventing things and like, what can I put together, that sort of thing. And so I did that for a long time in Texas. This was Central Texas I was working in with my group, and they were fantastic. They were Austin Waco Ghost Hunter Society. But about 9 years ago, I moved to upstate New York for work. And Kate told the rest of the story. Like we ended up meeting each other. I met John through a meetup as well, which was really weird. Really quickly, I had never been to a meetup. It's a little app on your phone. I guess you can use it on a computer. And I moved up here, and I was trying to meet people in the paranormal field, and it wasn't working, just passing by strangers, on the street going, paranormal, paranormal, like when the guy opens his jacket or whatever. It's like, so anyway, so I said, okay, I'm going to go see what this guy has to say. He had a little compelling speech on Meetup, and it's the only one I've ever been to. And I'll never go again because, well, it did its job. I went and met John, and it wasn't long after that I went ahead and joined the group because I liked what he had to say. I liked that he was approaching things logically. And so we hit it off really quickly. And so I was with the group about I think a year and a half or so before we met Kate. And that's how we all got together.
Interesting how people meet up, and I believe everything happens for a reason. So I do have a couple of questions for both of you, because some of the stuff rang true, and I'm trying to understand it and your perspective of it as a paranormal investigator. So, Kate, you said about the guy who lived in that house, the farmer. Now, knowing what you know now, do you think it's residual energy, or do you think it was alive, active energy in a sense where that existence through that person remains at that time and era, and you caught him through the visual?
Good question, because that was the only interaction I had with him, and at the time I thought it was an intruder, so it didn't click that it was paranormal, and I wasn't where I am now. I think I saw a blip in time. I think he was probably doing exactly what he was doing in his normal day. Maybe the bathroom was going into a barn. Like, I don't know the layout. I just know he just walked with purpose straight from one end of the room to the other. Maybe residual, maybe I just happened. I'm not the type of person to see a whole lot of things, and Robin can attest to this. I hear more. I walk in a room and I'm like, I don't like this. I rarely see things. And this was one of those first times that I really, really saw a full figured apparition. So I definitely, I would say he was doing exactly what he was doing. And I just happened in that moment to be open and receptive and saw him.
Interesting. So she's seen him, at that time, right? Was he dressed accordingly to, okay.
He had on jean overalls, no shirt. He had a hairy chest. He had like white long hair and had like a sun hat, just like a cowboy hat type, straw hat. And he was just walking just from this little tiny hallway, and it was from our kitchen. There was a kitchen, a laundry room, and our bathroom, but there was no door. Like, there was no way to go outside. This was a complete enclosed area. So I happened to see him walking by, and to me, I was like, is it a friend? Like, who was this? And all of a sudden I realized, well, it didn't look like my grandfather. It didn't look like any of my in-laws at the time. It sure as heck didn't look like my dad. So I went flying down thinking, well, did somebody break in? Did somebody, like, is this the landlord's somebody? And that's when I walked in that bathroom and was like, there's nobody here. The window is this big. Like, there's no way this 350-pound guy is getting out this little, like, tiny window. So
that happened to me too here. I don't know. I think I might have told you when you guys were here. When we first moved in, maybe like a year in, and you work, and the kids were really, really little, and I was upstairs, and I heard someone down here, and then I called the cops and everything. It was like this big, huge thing, and there's nobody here, and now I know, but then it's scary. It is really scary.
It's scary. It's as if two time zones between the physical and the spiritual cross.
Yeah.
Where people, and especially at a young age, through adolescence, you have clear thoughts. You can see the,
And let's talk about the stairs. You always bring up the stairs because you were talking about the cross, and you explain it the best, but it's stuck in my mind, the staircases.
Well, yes, some homes that are rebuilt over old cabins and Victorians, there's no stairs that exist in the new location because they didn't put the layout like that. But yet, through paranormal investigators, they hear people coming up and down the stairs. But the stairs don't exist, but they did exist with the previous home, which leads me to believe that somehow we're simultaneously, it's a multi-dimensional world where it's one of those things, that we're existing on different platforms somehow. And it's fascinating and it's true.
Well, think about it this way too. Sometimes you only see an apparition, maybe just the upper body, just the lower body. True. Our plane may be here, theirs may be here or here. So where you're, doing your normal thing and you see half a body walk by, Civil War, something like that, maybe they're just on their plane and you just have to catch that glimpse. Like when I saw this farmer, my son was barely a year old. So I was that new mom, hyper aware, hyper protective in a new home, had really no solid ground of this home. So I was just constantly like, every noise freaked me out. I had no idea. We were on a busy street. The front yard literally went like this. My son, in his little cart would fly down the driveway, and I'm like thinking he's going to hit oncoming traffic. So maybe in that moment, whatever I was doing, I was just able to get that right energy and was able to see him. And I noticed too, it happens more and more. Like when we were at Ohio State Reformatory, we had just finished an investigation. I was exhausted, but also like super hyper aware of where we were going. And I happened to look down the hallway and saw this weirdly old man with white hair again come out of the one cell, look, and then pop right back in. And I just remember going, there's no way I just saw that. And I went flying down after it.
There goes Katie running down the hallway in solitary. Bye, Kate.
They're all wondering where I'm going. I'm fully expecting again to see a guard, someone from the tour be like, oh, I'm down here. And there was nothing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So and I do think on the time thing, and I'm trying to remember which scientific entity this was. And I think it was the people at the CERN Collider have made a device where they were able to detect very slightly another dimension. And they think that there's maybe 12 or 13 like multiverse. And so we know like it sort of undulates and it moves. And this is my personal theory about the undulating and moving multiverse. So we're all existing at the same time. And for me and my thoughts, I've thought about this a long time and I don't have the equipment to prove this. But if it's undulating, let's say, and it's moving back and forth and they touch every now and then. And I think that can be like that window. Yep. Where we can see through to see those other timelines, but we're not exactly sure even now how time actually works. So it's really hard for us to come to conclusions as investigators. Are we seeing straight through? Are they here are they existing at the same moment in the same space? Are we seeing something that's replaying, or are we all existing doing our thing at the same time? It's very, very complicated, but sometimes I'd like to think that those multiverses and those timelines are just undulating and they touch, and we get to see just for that moment what's going on in their timeline, and then we can talk. Of course, we all get those intelligent EVPs and that sort of thing too, and I think that we're existing in the same space at the same time. And then there are those small separations that make it feel residual, that they're unaware of us, and most of the time I think we're unaware of them. It's extremely complicated subject matter, and I've been thinking for days.
It is complicated because you can go to 1,000 different theories.
Yeah.
But here's the truth: in simple forms, ghosts do exist, spirits do exist.
Yeah.
These in the simple form of things. They exist, period. And, not only through paranormal equipment, but through psychics or mediums. All these things they're us, actually. When we cross
disembodied voices, they're talking to us.
Disembodied voices can manipulate electricity, electronics, your cell phone, computers. It's been seen over and over and over and over and over again. And what I find fascinating is that some of the responses are intelligent and active as they know all time. And to me, that's a mind blower, because a lot of the recordings from previous investigators that have been here, can you see us? Yes. What am I doing? Sitting at the chair.
Mm-hmm.
What time does my clock say? 3 a.m. Yeah. And they know this.
Yes.
And I try to debunk
on the piece of paper and every the room I'm
through on a clear EVP. And I'm not talking about a spirit box, because I don't buy into most of them. I really don't. The ones that go and you're trying to make out the words like, no, I didn't order pizza. I don't buy into that stuff. What I buy into is no one's talking. It's a digital recorder. You ask a question, you give a minute response, and you play it back, and there it is. Yeah. That's a fact. You cannot debunk a fact, right? Yeah. Because that came from somewhere. Right. That came from somewhere. Now, Robin, first of all, my condolences to your brother. And I know it's a while back, but still, our condolences, because that's a hard thing. And when that person had told you that your brother was stuck, now I personally don't believe that in a tragedy a person is stuck at that time and they never leave that time. So give me your perspective as a paranormal investigator now and your thoughts on that.
Now fast forward from 1997 to 2022. which sounds weird just saying that out loud, actually, doesn't it? It's like, it seems like the future, but it is. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that they get stuck. And I think in general, when some people pass, they're not even sure that they passed right away. And perhaps that person, I don't know what their personal experiences were in life, but perhaps they had come across some sort of activity that made them feel like someone was stuck or something like that. Or you just hear things repeated so many times that you start repeating things. You have no basis for that. What I do think, and I actually have my other brother recently passed away at the beginning of 2021, and he came to, it was a surprise to me. This helped me understand a little bit, although I didn't believe about the stuck thing for a long time, but he came to Lori Wagatha, one of the owners of Wildwood Sanitarium. While I was out, we were there investigating and filming, and I was out getting pizza. I came back and she's like, your brother's here. He's been saying things to me. Do you want to hear? I was like, of course I want to hear. So basically he came to her, and first of all, he proved himself to me that it was him by doing some very specific things that were very relevant to me. She had no idea what she was doing. She was making hand gestures and doing all this stuff. It was karate. Okay. But anyway, he said he was not sure he had passed away right away. It took him several days, is what he said. And then he was met with someone, and he didn't explain who. Of course, this is through Lori, and she's just saying this stuff as fast as she can to me. And that he was given 4 choices on what he could do after he passed away. One was, and I can only remember 2 of them because I think I was just blinded by everything that she was saying to me, but they were important. One of them was that he could go ahead and move completely on and leave this plane of existence altogether. That was a choice. And the other one was that he could stay. He could stay and be some sort of a guardian. And she did not use the words guardian angel, but she did say some sort of a guardian. And I thought, well, that's really what he was in life. He was a protector of other people. He was, a really great person, and he wouldn't allow anyone to be hurt in front of him, that sort of thing. And I said, ho. It sounded like he was asking me. And I'm like, don't ask me. You do whatever feels great for you. If you think moving on is great, well, then you go. But my point about this is that he died on the coast by Houston, Texas, but on the coast down by Lake Charles, Louisiana. But he was bringing himself and talking to someone in Salamanca, New York, which is about an hour south of Buffalo. So he was traveling, that he wasn't stuck. He was able to go. And the thing about Wildwood on the side too is that people come from all over the world to visit this location. And one of the things that they report is that their loved ones, whether they're from Japan, whether they're from the United States, whether they're from wherever, come to them and talk to them at Salamanca at Wildwood Sanitarium. So my thought process is that if people get stuck, I just don't believe it, because I think they can travel wherever they really want to, and especially special locations, whether you want to call them conduits, portals. I said porthole. I say that as a joke sometimes, and I can't stop saying it. Portals, whatever it is that they have that certain energy. I just don't think people they can be maybe stuck because they're confused, and it's not a choice, but a thing that they're wrapped up in a timeline, perhaps. But just like physically and physics, you're stuck because you died of a traumatic experience here in this spot, and now you can never leave because of physics. No, I don't think so. No. Yeah.
I agree with that. I agree. Energy can do incredible things. It can't be created or destroyed, and
correct.
It goes on through a consciousness that is a different altered state of thinking, and how we think here in the physical realm when we talk to spirits that have crossed over. One of the things you said, what I found interesting, is he can stay in this plane or leave. Yeah. And the question I guess I would ask is, if a spirit leaves this plane, can they come back, or they can't come back for communication purposes?
Yeah, I don't know. We're starting to think that they can come and go. And I can't explain why, but I do think that they can come and go to a certain degree. But the thing that gets me about this, though, is that she made it sound like he was saying it was a definite gone thing, and this was his choice. So I don't know what planes we're talking about and what the threshold is for that. So in a way, it's like, can you go to wherever it is and then come back and visit every now and again, your special places, your special people? Or, but it made it sound like in this case, one of his choices was like whatever was next, like beyond. It made it sound very final when she said it. So there may be just all these layers of existences. Do you know what I mean? So it always gives you more questions,
than answers.
It's just so much to learn, and you just end up with question after question after question.
Yep.
Do either one of you or both of you believe in reincarnation?
Wholeheartedly. Yeah.
I do. I actually do. Yes.
Okay, so, and I believe in reincarnation as well, because I've had deja vu at young ages where I knew where I was. I just knew it. Couldn't have been there, but I was. So then my question is, because I agree that I believe in it as well, then at what point can you not communicate with someone who's crossed over because they were reincarnated? And if you can communicate with that person and they're reincarnated, who were you speaking to? A mimic? Or are you speaking to somehow the soul goes through different dimensions where we still exist on one platform, but we could exist on multiple platforms? And I say that because sometimes I feel like I could be somewhere else, like an out-of-body experience, for example, but I'm not there, but I am there through some kind of consciousness. And is that part of it? Is that part of, yes, we exist on other platforms as well, but we just don't realize it? Ladies, your thoughts?
If you go back to what you were talking about with energy doesn't die, I think that you have pieces of you. So you have that piece of you that's reincarnated. You have that piece of you that's still here. You have that doppelganger where somebody says, I swear you have somebody that looks just like you in France. I think those are all pieces of you, and it's all pieces of your soul. So you could, like, I remember in 2006, my brother was killed in a drunk driving accident, and going back to being stuck. I've never seen my brother or heard my brother or an EVP at the tree where he passed. There was one time shortly after he passed that a little kid said, are you related to the guy that's standing here, or something to that effect? And we were like, well, who? And he said, well, the guy that was here in the accident, he's here. And this little kid is 3-4 years old, like had no idea anything about it, told exactly what my brother looked like.
Wow.
And I've gotten in through mediums that he had the opportunity and has the opportunity to be reincarnated, to come back. But I also know that I've gotten EVPs from him, and I've gotten things at Wildwood of him coming through. So I think there's pieces of you that go on, but I think there's also pieces of you that live and continue to. And I think the more you talk about people and the more you give them energy and their stories and their history, I think that's your connection. So for us, that connection of Wildwood, it's almost like a giant lighthouse. We're all there, and all of our loved ones come through, and then we go home and we talk about our experiences and we talk about them and we give them more energy, and then we go back to that location, and it's just like it keeps feeding it like a giant battery.
Yeah.
Interesting. Robin, your thoughts?
I do subscribe to a lot of what Kate just said, and I do think that there is some splitting, maybe not. There's something that we talk about in our group called the cloud consciousness, where certain places, certain people, like you can be attached in a certain way that part of you is always going to be either at that location when you're interacting at that location or with that person in a way that you did when you were alive, that there's sort of a little bit of a split like that. And so if your soul is put back into another body later on, you're still existing like I'm existing on this plane right now. Allegedly I have a soul. That's what I've been told, although some people doubt it. But I'm here right now, but the person I was 1 or 2 lifetimes ago is still hauling wood, still getting water from the well, still doing those sort of things. But the main part of me is here right now. But if you were to interact with me and I knew, and at that well, I would still be able to, say, hi, I'm getting water, or whatever it is that was important to me, or that sort of thing. Like, that's still there, almost like Kate was saying, just split kind of pieces of you. I'm dying to kind of tell a little story about what she was saying about her brother and the tree. I kind of want to talk about real quick. I just want to mention something about, I do astral projection, and I did write that book and that sort of thing. And I talk about it. I went and I met my brother who was murdered, where he told me that he was okay and that he was doing all these wonderful things. And he showed me all the places that he can go and that sort of thing. But real quick, one of the things I wanted to mention, we were at my friend had passed away. So we all, after his funeral, we all met at my brother's grave. And I'm just dying to tell the story, so I've got to. So anyway, one of my friends had a son. He was about 3 years old at the time. Walks up to my brother's grave, doesn't know me from anybody. I traveled, 1,800 miles to be at this place or whatever. So doesn't know me from anywhere. This 3-year-old walks up and he points at me, and he points at the headstone. He points at me like this, and he's like, point, point, point. And there's like 5 people standing around, and we're all freaking out. And he keeps pointing at the headstone and pointing at me, and then goes, huh? And like puts his little hands up like, hey. And I think it was my brother had to be standing there, or he could see, I'm not sure. Do you know what I mean? Like, he could see that I was connected somehow. He had no idea what was going on. It's not like everybody was standing around going, that's your brother, that's you, and that's your brother. It was just this little kid walked up, and then somehow miraculously was able to put his hands on top of this pretty tall headstone and just jump and sit on it. And he just stared at me. And I thought my brother was either helping him inside him, or I know that he was actually there. So the part of me kind of drifted off on the original question. I'm sorry, because I was so fixated on what you had said.
Story, and it's so true how these young children can just, they're so open to everything.
Well, and that kind of brings up the fact that little kids tell you these very detailed stories about how they died in their previous life, going back to the reincarnation thing. Like, I'll bring myself back to it. Yeah. They tell you very detailed things. They have no idea what they're even talking about. And then as they get a little older, they seem to fade, and they like grow into the body and to the who they are now. But you guys have probably heard those stories, right?
Most definitely.
We really have to really believe these kids too, our kids, and we have to really stop putting everything under the carpet and really like believe.
Most of our guests that we've interviewed for years, this starts at adolescence, where they see apparitions, right?
Yeah, but we're always saying, "Oh, it's just your imagination."
Yeah.
And
I've heard stories of kids who can give their name, and there was I think it was a TV show that was, the mom said, well, let's start researching this, and they were actually able to find, wow, well, he's telling the story of he did die, in Normandy Beach, or he did, this thing. Like, how would my 3 or 4 year old know a full name and where he passed away, and that he was shot in the shoulder, or the leg? That's sort of like very specific things. So if that's not kind of proof of reincarnation, or I'd like to hear the explanation of how a toddler would know those details, and if we suspend our belief that the parents had never said anything to them about it, how in the world would they get that specific information?
And also the kids, they're a lot luckier than we were when we were little, because it's everybody's just so more open to paranormal and all of this right now.
Well, people are more receptive, especially the way the world is changing right now. Ladies, which one of you had any kind of dreams where deceased loved ones came through and they're trying to validate in the dream, hey, I'm okay?
I did.
Yeah. So most recently, my grandfather had passed away in 2018 now, I want to say. And it was probably a week after he passed. I was in a dream that we were at their camp, and I rounded this corner, and there was a food truck, which, I mean, we were all about food and drinks and parties. And I rounded this corner, and there was a food truck, and he's standing there, and his face was just shimmering. And it was my grandfather back when he was probably in his 50s. And he was a Marine. So he's this very staunch 6 foot, just kind of beast Hulk of a man. And he was just standing there. And I never speak to these people in my dreams, which is how I know they're more visits than dreams. But I walked up to him and I was like, Pop, you're okay. And he kind of like gave me this nod. And I go, well, let's go get a beer. Like, I have 1,000 questions. And he just kind of hugged me. And he always used to kiss me on the forehead. And he turned me and just pushed me forward. And I woke up. And I woke up hysterical. I'm like grabbing my boyfriend. I was like, get up. I have to tell you this. And I have all the notes still in my phone. And I was just like, that was it. And another one was shortly after my brother died. We were in a room. I have no idea what the room was. It was wood paneling, which I think was more like his mom's house. And he would always come up behind you and he'd like give you this giant bear hug. And that's all it was just his arm. And I could see it. And I was just doing this. And he just put his head behind me and we just hugged. And I went to turn to try to, give him another hug. And I woke up. And for me, that's what happens. I don't speak to people. There's rarely audible conversation. It's all through feel and touch and emotion. And that's to me. And when I wake up and I can tell you every single little detail, even now, 5-6 years later, that's a visitation.
Right.
That's
you can tell the difference between a visitation and just a dream. And then my brother who was murdered, I was extremely distraught afterwards. It had consumed my life. It was a very violent stabbing, like a very violent stabbing. I would go out to his grave all the time and I would talk to him and I would lay there and all this stuff. So finally he came to me in a dream and it was a visitation. And he said, stop what you're doing. He said, I can see everything you're doing. This is not healthy. He said, look at me. No scars. Look at my face. My arm works. He had an industrial accident. It kind of worked, but it was messed up. He's like, look at me. My arm works. I have no scars. It's all gone. He said, I don't have anything. There's nothing wrong with me. I am perfect. I am happy. You need to stop. And and that was the dream I mentioned a little while ago, where he was like, look at the places that I am. Look where I am. Look what I can go. I'm fine. You're not fine.
It's
sort of thing. Yes.
The people they leave behind, we're the ones that are going through all this pain. And I guess it's hard because I've heard stories like this before.
Yeah.
And they're real dreams. They're real.
It changed my life. That visitation changed my entire life. I'm telling you, I was not doing well. And I literally woke up from that and went, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And I'm going to see him again, Yeah.
I believe that. And I've had those dreams myself. And that's why I asked that. And it kind of makes me think, are we actually leaving the soul at that point, leaving the body, meeting them in their dimension?
I think the more you can control your dreams and the more comfortable you are in that dream state, I think it's easier to connect with loved ones. A couple years ago, my former mother-in-law had passed away, and her and I were very, very close. You leave a family and sometimes things happen, and sometimes, you still connect with people. And she was the one person that I was never able to get her through to my dreams. And just probably within the last 2 weeks, she's been coming more and more and more. And I'll walk downstairs. I'm like, hey, Nick, Grammy says hi. Hey, she's doing this. And he's like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing at night? And I was like, well, moon water next to the bed helps. But, great jewelry that your friends make you. I was like, you have to be open. So I think that the more you talk about these people and you connect with them, I think it helps. I think bringing that energy, and I try at night to just kind of, there's someone I think I need to connect to. I try to say like, hey, come on through. 3 and 5 a.m. is usually my good time to dream. I'll wake up, anytime, and I'm like, all right, something's about to happen. And then I go right back to sleep. And that's usually when it happens.
Yep.
How would either one of you tell people that are trying to connect with a loved one the best way to communicate with them and validate that it's really them coming through?
Ooh, I would think just as far as the first part, there's like multiple parts to that. But the first part, I would just say, be somewhere quiet. You don't necessarily have to be meditating, but talk to them like you did when they were alive and you could physically see them. Just keep talking about them to other people, talk to them. Tell them that you miss them. Tell them that you love them. Say their name. Keep their name, and that's the first part of it, because more than likely, whether or not you're going to be able to hear them talk back to you, who knows your location, the energy, their energy level, their willingness to do so, your ability to hear it. There's a lot of factors on the other end of that. But I would say that if they would trust the fact that I have been doing this and hearing these people and talking to people, and let's say I'm not crazy and this is real, they can hear you. And if it is the fact that you just want to tell them you love them and you miss them, say it. Yeah. Say it out loud. They can hear you. And I don't know about the proof part on the other end.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely.
I think I think you know when you've connected with them, and and even if you don't see their face, if there's something in that dream that makes you feel comfortable, then you know it was them. I mean, even a smell, a color, or
you can ask for a sign. That's true. Yeah, you do that all the time. A feather, a penny,
I was going to say that's another thing. Code words. If you write on a piece of paper, if you have a dream journal, write down like, I want to talk to my nanny, and come through with the word teacup. Even if you don't put it out there, someone like Lori or Brooke or a medium or anyone,
or they might be like person. Yeah.
You might turn on the radio. Like my brother, who was 20 years old when he passed, one of his favorite songs was In Your Eyes. And every once in a while I will flick on the radio. And how many times in this century do you hear In Your Eyes?
Right.
Come on the radio.
That actually just happened with my other brother. Like, that song Convoy. There's that song Convoy from the 70s. You never hear that. And we walked into his favorite place where he liked to sit, and have drinks at the pub down the street or whatever. And of all the music that they play, I walked in and Convoy started playing. And I said, you have to be kidding me or whatever. But I knew he loved that place.
Nope. And that's the thing. I'll get that. I'm like, all right, Anson, I get it. All right, you're around. I
believe that. Music is one of the biggest ways that I believe spirits communicate. And it's no more coincidence when you think about that person than within an hour or so you're hearing a song and wait a second, I remember being on vacation with this person, or they were at home and the song was playing, and
somebody just mentions it randomly. You're like, what?
Yep.
Convoy. What movie was that song? That was a 70s movie.
Convoy? I don't know. I'm sure I'm much too young to remember.
That was like a Burt Reynolds. That was a Burt Reynolds.
I was going to say, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
that's good because a lot of people that we speak to try to communicate with loved ones, and it's a very hard and sad time for a lot of people, as we all know what's going on in the world, and death is all around us. But as spiritualists, I believe that it's hard. It's very, very hard to accept someone that's died, because in the physical realm, we there's part of us that does say they're gone, we'll never see them again, but the spiritual part says, wait a second, hold it.
We can understand.
I'm a paranormal investigator. Right. I've spoken to the other side. I know we go on.
Not that it's any easier, but
it's not easier, but it's a validation.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to put into my head that no, we do go on, because I've made communication with friends that have crossed over that is nearly impossible, but they were showing me the possibilities are real. It's and Robin, when you said about your brother, and that rings a lot of things, because a friend of mine crossed over was like, no, you need to be okay. I'm fine.
Yeah.
I look at me. And he looked great in the dream.
Yes.
But the dream was real.
It's us.
And the dream, he had a glow around him. He looked like he was younger and vibrant and full of wisdom. And I was the one that needed the validation of, do we go on, and are you okay? And for those people that are listening, look, there's 4 of us, and we're paranormal investigators, and some of us have abilities, and I can promise the listener out there that you can communicate, and a true loved one is never gone. A loved one is never gone forever. And my method would be the dream state, because if you have clear thoughts with no TV, no radio, no cell phone, and you open yourself up, sometimes when you think about that person, their energy will come and they will validate, hey, I'm here. But then other means, like you belong to a paranormal team, and I was kind of impressed with the equipment you brought down here to the Horsefly Chronicles home.
Yes, that was my
question. That was different.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the amazing technique that you guys have while investigating, because it's different. And what makes you guys different from other paranormal teams?
That's a lot of a question. That's such a big question. Well, you mentioned a couple of things, and we don't always rely on our equipment, but we do have some specialized equipment that we have thought of and invented and brought to fruition. And one of the things we do is our devices collect a lot of data. Okay, that's one thing that we do. We're a data-driven team in that respect, and we do use some of a lot of the methods that a lot of other people use. But when our devices, when you see them glowing and maybe going off or whatever, trust that every second all of that data is being recorded into databases so that we can correlate it later. That's the big thing. We try to use scientific method whenever we certainly can. So we go back and say, well, here was this EVP, or here was this these 3 knocks when we asked for them. Let's go back and see if any of the devices recorded fluctuations. And there's a lot of different things that we're recording. The standard atmospheric type things, like I've always considered ghosts weather, because if we're living in this physical world and you use physics, they have to use what we have at hand to manifest. So ghost weather, that sort of thing. But then there's some other things that we use, and boy, we have some really fun stuff coming up too. So, I mean, by the end of the night, each little piece of equipment we have may have 10, 20,000 pieces of data. So we can literally watch something come towards the device, walk away from the device. So if we can, we have a timestamp. So if we have the EVP timestamp, the device is sitting there, we can say, wow, it said, hi, here I am. At the same time, all these different things changed about the atmosphere at the same exact time. So it shows, so there's that part of it. And the other, what makes us different, Kate? And there's, you can have the hard part.
She's gonna kill me for that question.
I think it's exactly that. I think it's that we don't just say, hey, can you pull my hair? Hey, here's a recorder. What's your name? We try really hard to do all of that, but then, say, well, ironically, so the camera that we were using at your house, guys, nothing recorded. There's it completely wiped my SD card, nothing recorded. There was one photo that I took in the hallway as a joke, thinking that it was just going to be something to add to our investigation. That was the only thing that was saved on that SD card. Everything else was gone. So we don't just rely on one piece. It's, okay, we all have the same recorder. We all have this. We all have that. We're walking around with our phones, and we're trying to see that correlation of, okay, we have a cat ball here. I have a cat toy. I have 3 cats. So I'm going to bring this stupid toy and see what happens. And if we can get that to light up, and we can get that EVP, and we can see that the weather app, our weather technology is saying this, and our I'm losing my train of thought here. Yeah. If we can get all these different little pieces to line up, then it's like, okay, well, if we got it once, can we recreate it? And if we know that water is a conductor, and we know this type of crystal is a conductor, and we know this is a conductor, can we not only recreate it, but then give it a battery? And then can we give it a bigger battery? And then can we do it in this part of the house, that part of the house, and that part of the house?
Right. And then can we take it to another location and repeat the whole thing and see if we can get, and really the object is can we hone in on what it is that opens that clarity of communication, that sort of thing. And really, like she was saying, like Kate was saying, hone in on what it is. Is it the water? Is it and people laugh at crystals and all that, but you know what? They're in your watches. They're in all your technology. They're in the computer that you're using right now to listen or watch this show. They actually do conduct and hold electricity and other things. So basically, if we can, what we're trying to do is narrow all that down so that we can open a better channel for communication. And yes, there'll probably be variations on it. be from location to location, but we're going to try to open up channels to clear long-term communication so that you don't have to doubt what that ghost box is really saying. You know, like, is it the radio that you're hearing? Is it interference? Is it whatever? That we're really trying to open up a nice, clear. And is that going to be easy? Is it easy? It's not easy. But the one thing that's going to make it believable and people are going to understand it is that they're going to be able to see, because we're going to make and we do make our data, but we're going to have a huge database where people can go search it. They're going to be able to go look and say, this is valid scientific method. You know, a lot of people in paranormal, most people that were laughed at a lot of times, were not taken seriously by the scientific community. It's one thing we also are trying to change by utilizing the methods and the peer review and that sort of thing, so that people can go in and say, this is valid research. And so I'm going to trust this piece of equipment. I'm going to trust this conclusion that they came to, because not only did they come to it, they actually handed over all their stuff or their methodology to other people to try it. They tried it. They've come to the same conclusion. So this should be valid. So if we can do all of that, hand someone, if we can hone it all in, hand someone a piece of equipment or a method, it doesn't have to be equipment, a method of some kind, and say, this is valid because us and everybody else have been trying it out and it's working. I think that's one of the things that kind of makes us different, maybe.
I like it. These are different. We've had numerous teams here at the Horsefly Chronicles home. I like the way you work. And it is different. It's a different technique, which I was finding very interesting. Unfortunately, the hour is up. The show is over. Yeah, really quick, ladies. We definitely want to do part two, both of you, because you're both very, very intelligent, well-spoken, and you have a lot of knowledge within the field. Really quick, where can people find you, and what do you have going on?
And where can we find your book, Robin?
Okay, you can find You and I Research very easily on Facebook by searching for Paranormal Puzzle by You and I Research, because we do have a show on the Paraflix network called Paranormal Puzzle, where we're putting all of this kind of out to the public for that. You can find my book on Amazon by searching Robin Ramsey or Astral Projection. You can find it there. Kate, anything else?
Find us on Paranormal Puzzle. My personal page is just Katie Peak on Facebook. You can search it that way on Instagram as well. You can also search it at, I think it's Irish Girl 518.
Oh, right. I'm Sweet Robin. I'm Robin Sweet Roll Ramsey on Facebook and Instagram, Robin Sweet Roll Ramsey. You can find me there too. Connect with us anyway, and we'll direct you where you need to go.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ladies. It's been a great, quick, fast, intelligent show.
Always too fast.
Yep. Julie, wrap it up.
All right, guys. Well, we want to have a special thank you to Carnation for fully sponsoring the show. We love them. Thank you so much. Please join us next Monday night on United Public Radio Network on 105.3 FM from New Orleans. And stay tuned from the Angel Rock with the amazing Laura Lee Houghton.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great, safe night. And we'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye. Good night.
Aloha, everybody. This is Kathy Bilski, the Quantum Leap Let Light Unite show on UPR Radio. And this is Friday, January 7th, 2022, the first time I was able to say that this year. I just want to tell everyone really quick, thank you for participating in World Enlightenment. And just start paying attention now to what happens on the planet. That's all I can say. Especially the good things. And when you see maybe people standing up for a restaurant owner in Australia when the police are harassing them and actually get the police to back down, that's enlightenment. That's people with courage and really connecting to the Creator and standing up for what's right. But tonight, I thought we would have some fun and we would do some predictions with astrology with Dave Petrella, right? Okay. Which I call an astrology whiz. And he's we're gonna discuss astrology and where the planets, what they hold us, what's in store for us this year. Hi, Dave. Come on in. How are you?
Hey, Kathy. Yep, I'm good. How about you?
I'm pretty good, but before we get started, I wanted to tell you something really, really funny that happened today to me at the store. Is that okay? I thought it was really funny, but remember, I'm from Midwest Michigan, and we do have a very interesting, witty, sarcastic sense of humor. So let me set up what actually happened now. I'm from Michigan, where it's very, very cold, okay? And I grew up what they call the golden years of the Union. So when people had retired from working, they would go down to Florida, okay, in retirement. So I had these two young men come into the store today, 20, maybe 20 years old, and they lived in Florida. And I started laughing with them, and I go, God, that's a state of old people. And the one young one goes, oh my God, do I ever know when I see somebody young on the street, it's like, oh my God, look, a young person. I don't know. I kind of equated it to looking for your deer spotting, you know, when you go out at night and you're like, oh my God, there's a deer. Oh, wow. Okay. So, and he looks at me, he goes, do you know what we call the state of Florida? And I went, what? Oh God. God's waiting room.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. It cracked me up. Now, coming from Michigan, and those of you that know geography, you'll know that Michigan is surrounded by water and all the way around, and it looks like a hand. So we said, you know, we were raised in the hand of God. So why can't you go down to Florida and be in God's waiting room? I mean, okay. Anyway, I guess you're not really laughing. I thought it was funny. If you're really old, you really get it. You think it's humorous.
Well, you know,
waiting room down there. I mean,
well, I've heard it about Arizona too, Kathy. You know, I've heard that one a few times, and well, I'll tell you what, like it's a good place to be because it's warm almost all of the year, so it's a good place to wait. You know, I think that's accurate, and it's actually well in Hawaii too, but the strength of the sun's rays are obviously a lot higher, and I've actually lived in Florida for periods in the past, and it really helps to get well, I mean, it just makes you feel, you know, even if I was having maybe not a great day or something, I walked outside, the sun was strong, you know, the just lots of UV kind of and high
I
energy.
know, but they've got alligators there.
Well, they,
Just
you know what?
saying.
I've
Okay.
never had a problem with one. I've never even actually, I don't even think I've seen one out of like a reserve or something like that or Disney World. I've seen alligators live in the wild in Texas actually. But I guess I haven't seen one in Florida, you know, and I've been on some trails too. I haven't seen one though. So
Wow. Okay. Put that on your bucket list. So we're going to talk about astrology. So before we jump in, you know, I kind of mentioned that, you know, a lot of people don't know about the signs, and, you know, can you give a little blurb on each sign and, you know, what their basic characteristics are? And I know that it can change depending on the person and the year you were born and all that, but you know, am I wrong saying that Leos can be stubborn? They do like to be kings and queens, and they got really good hair.
yes, that's correct. Yep, that is definitely
Okay.
correct. There's a reason for you know, for categorizations and things like that, because if you look at large groups of people, and actually this is something I talked about with someone recently, they said, oh, like you can probably just look at my chart and make anything fit for me and say it's based on astrology or whatever. And I said, well, you know what? Guess what? After you do thousands of these, and then you can build a large database, then if you were to be able to see what I'm seeing, then you would see. You know, if you're looking at it objectively, you're going to see large patterns. And in fact, as for someone, if someone's watching, they don't believe in astrology, you know, take all your friends and family, you know, figure out their birthdays, put them in their proper sign, and then look at all those people as a group and just think about it as you read the description. That's what I would encourage. And then you're going to see how incredibly accurate the pattern is. It's a really basic experiment people can do if they're, you know, curious about it. But yeah, in any case, so there's 12 signs. You can actually see if you can. I'm not sure if you can read the writing on the whiteboard I have, but this is the zodiac. There's 12 signs in the zodiac. It always traditionally starts in Aries, which is the spring equinox. So Aries people are all about action. They often act, and actually, a lot of times they don't really think. They just start doing something, and that can get them into some pretty dicey situations. Actually, um, they can be argumentative. They can be kind of warlike. They kind of like to fight. They like a good battle. So that's kind of basic for Aries. And then second sign is Taurus. Taurus is when everything, Aries is the big burst of energy, and Taurus is when things really slow down and calm down. And Taurus people really enjoy all of the pleasures of life. They like colors and candles and television and food, actually, especially food. They love food. They take their time. They're also a very stubborn sign because they're in the middle of the season. And it's the same with Leo, too, Kathy, is that you're in the middle of the summer. And so that makes it's called a fixed sign. All the fixed signs are stubborn, all four of them. Taurus are also they're very caring, they're very sweet people, and they don't want to fight, but if you push them, they are a bull. So just be aware that they have that in them if it's necessary. Okay, the third sign is Gemini, and Gemini, it's the twins, and that's when things start to split. Yep, and they're on both sides, so they can see both sides of every issue. They can usually do it pretty objectively, which is really impressive. If you've ever seen a Gemini do that, they don't invest necessarily on one side, or they don't identify with one side, so they're not offended if someone else comes in and says something on the other side. They don't really show a lot of emotions. They like to joke. They're kind of the jokers. They like to play around. They love to be sociable. They're just a really good time. They're really fun people, but it's kind of hard to sometimes get close to them because they don't show a lot of the emotions. Okay, then that's the spring season. Those three signs are in the spring. And then you got the summer solstice, and then the fourth sign is in Cancer. And Cancer is the crab, of course. And Cancers, they're very emotional people. They need to feel safe. They need to have a safe space. So if they feel uncomfortable, they need to have a place where they can kind of go crawl away and hide for a while. They're very good hosts. They're generous. They like to make people feel comfortable, and they tend to be kind of conservative. They're pretty careful. They're pretty cautious. And then the fifth sign is Leo, which is, again, that's in the middle of the summer season now, and that's a fixed sign. Can be a very stubborn sign. Leos, like you said, Kathy, they're the kings and the queens of the zodiac. They really generally need to be the center of attention all the time if possible. That would make them very happy. They can get jealous if they're not getting it and someone else is. But they're very fair. They try to be very, very fair to everyone, and they don't hold grudges, but they never forget. So if you do something wrong to a Leo, they're not going to forget what you did. So don't try to pretend that you didn't do it, because they know that you did, and they might keep their distance. The other thing Leos do too is if they're not interested, they'll just walk away. They don't even say anything. They just disappear and they're just gone. And the person be like, yeah, they'd be like, where'd that person go? Well, if you think about a cat, that's what cats do too. If they're not interested, and Leo's the cat's not interested, it just walks away. And that's the end of it. Okay, so that's Leo, the fifth sign. The sixth sign is Virgo. Virgo is the last sign of the summer. Virgo is it's the Virgin, so it's a very conservative sign. They're very careful and cautious. They have a lot of anxious energy, and they get nervous a lot, and they talk very fast because Mercury is the ruler of Virgo. But they're very sweet people. They're very generally positive, happy. Great hosts. They're really good at organizing and researching and information, putting things together, all those types of things. Okay, and then now we get the fall equinox, and this is the third season. It begins with Libra, which are the scales, and again, there's two sides, and so it's balancing the summer with the fall, and that's the scale in that instance of describing it. Is that you're trying to balance, the two in between the two seasons like that. But Libras tend to be very indecisive. It's very hard for them to make decisions usually. They're very sweet though, very nice people. They try to be humanitarians, and they try to be they're really good diplomats. They're excellent at that. They try to have everyone get along. All they want is peace. They want peace and harmony. And it's ruled by Venus, so anything to do with love and being kind and being generous to people and being fair, of course, fair and justice. It's all these things. That's what Libra is. Okay, eighth sign is Scorpio. Scorpio contains Halloween, just to give people an idea of kind of some of the energy. And so Scorpios, they tend to be very intense people. They're very good leaders if they have the chance. But they, if you're standing in their way and they have to get through, they will plow through you. So just be aware. It's not a gentle sign usually. Now, if they feel understood, they can be very loyal, a very loyal person. They can be very loyal to you, but they have to feel like you're understanding who they are and what they want and what they're about. They don't usually show their full, really actually anything they have in terms of their deck of cards. They kind of keep everything secret. They like to monitor everything. They kind of watch and survey everything. And they have a lot of dark interest in dark mysticism and occult topics and things like that.
And I was always said, you don't really make a Scorpio mad, because you think Leos never forget. The Scorpios, correct me if I'm wrong, not only don't they forget, but they really try to get back at you.
Oh yeah, they will. And Scorpio is also a fixed sign, by the way, one of the four, and they will. Well, it's ruled by Mars, so they will fight. They don't have a problem fighting, but they are actually kind of secretly sensitive, but they will never let that on. It's a water sign, so that's the feminine aspect of it, but it has Mars as the ruler. And here's the thing that they do too, Kathy, is that, and I'm not trying to blow your cover, Scorpios, but I just want people to understand, every there's an explanation for everyone here. Scorpios can be really like emotionally manipulative. So sometimes they'll fight you passive aggressively. Sometimes they'll fight you head on. They always have a way to do it, and they always will do it if they feel like they want to. And it's not hard for them. It's just how they are. Okay, so Sagittarius is the ninth sign, the last sign of the fall season. And Sagittarius, they have a lot of energy. It's like one of the best ways I've heard described is they're like a ball of energy. And don't try to get them to calm down or to lessen their energy. It's not, they're not going to be happy with you if you try to do that. They value their freedom probably first. They're very interested in traveling. They like to go different places, and they're also very interested in wisdom and philosophy. They can be very, very blunt, and that can sound very offensive to some people, because they don't really sugarcoat it. They just say whatever they feel like saying. They can be tyrants too, because it's ruled by Jupiter. So that's Sagittarius. Okay, and then the last quadrant is starting at the winter solstice is Capricorn. And Capricorn, actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about tonight in terms of 2022, because it's going to play an important part. But Capricorn, they're very serious people. They're very disciplined and determined. They are great at doing projects and completing them. They don't necessarily rush, but there's no extras with Capricorn. So they're just, they just say it how it is, and there's nothing, literally, there's no flair at all. There's nothing extra at all. Sometimes they don't even talk because they don't have to. They don't talk unless they have to, generally is how Capricorn is. But it doesn't mean they're not feeling proud or happy inside. They just don't need to show it. They have a little devilish sense of humor too. Capricorns like games. And if you think about the devil comes from Capricorn, or the depiction of the devil as a hoofed animal. It comes from Saturn. And actually Saturn and the satyr too, which is from mythology with the cloven hooves and everything. And it's the ruler of Capricorn. And Capricorn is the goat. So if we know these things, and this is hell too down here. This is the winter. In Spanish, winter is invierno, which is inferno. It's actually the opposite of what it means. But all these things we can see where the words came from. Okay, and then we've got Aquarius, which is the 11th sign. We're in the age of Aquarius now. So when I describe Aquarius, also think about basically roughly since 2012, this is the general energy that's going to be pervading the planet. it's kind of the backdrop of the play, if you will, of what's happening currently. And so Aquarius, they're very progressive. They're humanitarian. They are futuristic. Good motto that they live by is to live and let live. So, they try to do their own thing and they let other people do their own thing. But they're interested in progress of humanity. They can be a little quirky, a little weird, a little bit strange. They like having weird things around. They like sometimes doing things just to toss things up and see how people respond to it. And sometimes it's also a serious sign, and sometimes they keep to themselves because they just do their own thing. But they're also pretty mystical people. Not as mystical as Pisces, which is the 12th sign, which is the last one. And Pisces is also going to figure very importantly in what we'll talk about too tonight, because while Pisces people, they're the wisest sign of the zodiac. They have a little bit of all of the signs before them in them. And so it's actually called a mutable sign, so they can change. They could change who they are depending on circumstance. But they're very sensitive people. They try to be nice and love everyone, try to treat people fairly, but they can also come across as tyrants as well, because they're ruled by Jupiter. And a tyrant, it'll feel like people will feel a lot of times judged by Pisces people, like you're judging me because you think I'm less than you or something like that. People just have to understand that they have a lot of good wisdom. And if you want wisdom, you really should listen to a Pisces. And if you want to talk about the dream world, also listen to Pisces, because they know all about that. So those are the 12.
Okay, let's get into, we've got Mercury in retrograde coming up soon. Why should we be worried or concerned about it?
Well, any of the retrograde planets, most people have like at least one in their birth chart, which is, it's the state of the sky at the time you were born, which is the time and location, day and year and all these things. And whatever was in that sky at that exact moment of birth, it gets stamped into your mental construct and into your physical body. And then you live with that template for the rest of your life. So a lot of people have a retrograde something, not always Mercury, but retrograde in general, it indicates that the energy is forced internally. And so it actually sets up a situation where it forces you to deal with energy inside of yourself as opposed to outside of yourself. And so what it does is, and I'll mention retrograde is the apparent backwards motion of the planet from the vantage point of Earth. It's not technically, it's not supposed to be actually moving backwards. It just looks like it's moving backwards, but it creates internal karmic challenges generally, and it can create physical challenges in the body. Okay, so Mercury, being a fast planet and being a tricky planet, likes to play games. It's also the messenger from mythology too. And it can do one of two things, and I always like to say that the astrology is very dualistic. So if people say, oh, it's a retrograde, it's going to be a problem. Well, not necessarily. It might be. For a lot of people, they will feel it, but a lot of people will help them in their productivity. So I'll just start with the good side. If it's affecting you, and everyone's different, by the way, it depends a lot on your own chart. Mercury, when you say Mercury's retrograde right now, that's indicating what's called a daily transit, which means that that's what it's doing right now in the sky. Now, how that compares to your own chart, your own birth chart, is going to determine how it affects you specifically as an individual. It's not the same for everyone. But it can do one of two things. Either it can improve your speed. If you're trying to do a project and like you need a boost, it might help you because it's a quick planet. But on the other side, it's just as possible that it could start to trick you and play games and kind of mess around and flip things around on you. And that's, when most people say, ooh, Mercury retrograde, that's what most people are thinking. Is that, yeah, it can be very tricky.
You wouldn't start a project, brand new project or a relationship in retrograde, would you?
I probably wouldn't if I happen to look at it. One of the things that I do, I was talking with someone the other day about this too, is that if you're in tune enough to your own energy and your own sovereignty and also the energy around you, generally you're going to actually feel what the right thing to do is. Now, I know not everyone's at that space, and you have to, you know, have to be able to move energy, and you have to takes a lot of practice and time. But I can always feel if it's the right time without, and I don't have to necessarily look at the daily transits and stuff like that. I probably initially would not do that. And you know, actually, a good way to do it, Kathy, I would say, is that like Mercury retrograde is starting on January 14th this year, going through February 3rd. And it's also, by the way, it's also May 10th through June 2nd, and then September 9th through October 2nd. And so what I would do is people who are really interested in the effects, you know, just watch how you're reacting, and watch how your life is during that period of time, and see if you see a very productive time for yourself, then maybe look at the next retrograde, Mercury retrograde, and maybe think about, okay, maybe I'll start something here. But if you watch it and it's not something that's good for you, then no, I wouldn't. I agree with you. I wouldn't do that next time.
Interesting. My understanding also, it's a time where electrical equipment can break down. It goes for the weak spots and whatever, you know, whether it's, you can have communication problems, phone problems, you know, like I said, your car can break down, your computer may not work, projects may not come together like you said. I would always say, you know, if you have a meeting, make sure you have a backup for that meeting in retrograde, and then a backup for the backup, and then, you know, run with the wind.
Well, and you know what, Kathy, I always have a backup anyway, every day of the year. So if people make plans like that, if you plan for things not necessarily going perfectly, then you're always ready, you know, no matter what happens.
But like you said, if you've already have something started already, and then it goes into retrograde, it would be a good time to finish it, if that's where you were at in that project.
Yeah, sure. Or you could, if you had the time, I mean, you could technically wait until it's finished and then you could pick it back up if you wanted to. There's so many options, but like I was saying before, I really think the best way to do it, because it does affect everyone differently. Some affects good in good ways, some affects bad ways, is like watch this retrograde coming up starting January 14th and just see how you feel. You know, you could even, if you wanted to, you could even keep a journal and just see how your daily life is. Do you feel like you're being assisted, or do you feel like you're being thwarted? And then based on what you feel, then I would say the next time that comes around, then I would plan accordingly. You know,
Well,
if you want to.
Found, you know, because I have a store that a lot of times I call it the retrograde crowd, because that's when they come back into my life.
Oh, okay.
I see them in retrograde, and it really cracks me up. You know, they walk in, I go, it's got to be retrograde, and it is.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting. You could say something similar maybe about like the full moon that has obviously a lot of effect. And the thing to remember too, well, here's the other thing that's important is Mercury it's a close planet relatively. So, you know, if you're even talking about physics, you know, whatever's closest is going to have a large effect. It does depend on the mass and volume and all kinds of different things in physics as well, but these are close familiar planets, and if they go in retrograde, they're not far away, so you're going to feel it, just like the full moon, you know, the Mercury, of course. And
okay, sometimes you don't want to get out of bed when Mercury's in retrograde, you know? It's like, keep your conversations really short so you just don't have that communication. I put my foot in my mouth again, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point, Kathy, because Mercury, it is the messenger, so it is in charge of communication. It rules Gemini, rules Virgo, and so I agree with that. Be careful what you say. Like, you know, it might feel like it's on the tip of your tongue and you just have to say it, but you know, be careful. Especially, it's gonna feel like it's moving fast. It's like, I need to say this, I need to say it now, and I need to say it fast. But be careful. And I agree, that's Mercury retrograde. Yep.
And isn't it also kind of like the full moon that, you know, so Mercury in retrograde actually starts the 14th, but then you've got that curve, like for the first, 3 days before, 3 days after rule, that you've got to be careful with what you do.
Yeah, and that's called an orb generally in astrology. I would say that's generally very accurate. Anytime you have an event, 3 days, and sometimes it's interesting though, because there's what's called applying and separating, and if you're coming into it, a lot of times it's a stronger effect than when you're pulling away from it. So if you're on the applying side of whatever it is, which means the closest side to you, from whichever vantage point, then you're going to be. I would be more vigilant than I would be if you're on the other side, which is called the separating side. But then here's the other thing: is that it doesn't stop at 3 degrees on either side. It keeps going. The way I usually do it is I do a 3-degree orb on either side, and then I do a 7-degree orb on either side, which is like the second level, in terms of effects. It's like a fair amount of effect, whereas a 3-degree is a strong amount of effect. And then I go up into about a 9-degree orb, 9 degrees or 9 days to either side. And then after that, I just kind of forget it, because it's so nominal after that it's
It's a lot of time that comes around 4 times a year.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's right.
Okay,
Now can I say one more thing, Kathy?
Yes.
Okay, so the Mercury retrograde, the other thing that it does is that it will try to convince you sometimes that you believe something that you don't. So be very vigilant. Like, you don't believe something, or you don't want to do something, and it's going to try to come in and trick you, saying, oh no, look, hey, you believe this side? Well, how about this side? Because maybe you should try it this way. So just be careful, because it tries to get you to do sometimes to do things that you don't believe in. People should be aware of that.
All right. Wow, that was pretty cool. So let's get into predictions, Wizard.
Okay. All right. So we already did that one. So since we're on retrogrades, we'll just continue, because there's a few, more that I want to highlight in 2022. All right. So I already listed the 3 coming up for Mercury retrograde. And then we'll talk about really quick Venus retrograde. Now, Venus retrograde is, let's see, it actually started, we're actually in it right now, believe it or not. And so that started on December 19th. It's going all the way through January 29th of this month, and this year, of course. And, that's Venus is love. So, in terms of starting a new relationship, it's probably not the best idea. But
it can pull old unfinished business back into your life, right?
Yeah, it can. If you start getting phone calls from an ex or something, or something of that nature, then I wouldn't be surprised at all. That you're right about that. But again, it can go either way. So it might be, maybe you meet someone under like not great circumstances, and maybe it's rough for a couple weeks, and then when you come out of the retrograde, well, you met that person, so now you can continue to get to know them, and that might not be a bad thing necessarily. But yeah, that's a good point. Okay, then there's Mars retrograde coming up on October 30th of this year, going all the way through January 12th of 2023, actually. And Mars retrograde is dangerous, because Mars is the planet of war, but it's also the planet of action. So it doesn't have to be something that's going to destroy things and be negative. It's also something to get things done, and you can get things done in a non-violent, peaceful way. If you have a focus on Mars, and when you're doing projects and stuff like that, then you're going to be a lot more likely to actually just get it accomplished, because you have that support. But watch out for the confrontations and stuff like that. That's a good word for it. Or anything that could be like an intense argument or situation or something. Just be aware during that time that it's going to be elevated. It's going to be an elevated chance for that to happen. That kind of thing. Okay, then let's see. Oh, okay. Wait a minute. Mars, Mercury. Oh, okay, that was split up. All right. And then there's actually one, you're right, Kathy. So there's 4 Mercury retrogrades, and I'll just mention the last one because I had it. The last one starts December 29th of this year. It goes through January 18th of next year, of 2023. So that's, a little bit away.
But what were the other 2?
With
Venus?
Venus?
No, Mercury in retrograde. You got January 14th, what we're going into. And what were the other 2?
Okay, we got January 14th through February 3rd. We've got May 10th through June 2nd. And we've got September 9th through October 2nd. And then
it's really something good I would put on your calendar, guys. So, you just have a heads up what's coming and act accordingly, right?
Yeah, be aware of it. I also mentioned this real quickly. I just talked with someone recently. If you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, I would say it's probably more likely that you're going to know how to deal with it because it's familiar to you. It doesn't mean it makes it easy or pleasant, but it's, you live with that every day if that's in your birth chart. So it's not something out of the ordinary for you necessarily. So those people who have that in their birth chart, and if you don't know, by the way, I mean, obviously I do birth charts. That's what I do as a career. I'm an astrologer. So if you'd like to have a birth chart done to find out about that or find out about anything else, let me know, and we can get that taken care of for you too. But the Mercury, like I said, if you have, and not just for Mercury, if you have any of these planets in retrograde in your birth chart, and then it comes up during the daily year in retrograde during the daily transit, you're probably going to feel like, oh, I'm used to this. I live with this every day. So you might be a little bit better to armed to figure out how to deal with that in that case. So, just pay attention. But I agree with you, Kathy. Like, it wouldn't hurt to put it on your calendar. I don't think that's a bad idea, just to be aware of it. Okay, so there's 2 more parts that I want to talk about, and we have about 20 minutes, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll talk about 2 more parts, and then we can obviously talk about whatever that people have interest in or that you want to ask. There's 2 big events now. The retrogrades, those types of things happen, somewhat frequently, but there's other things that don't happen that frequently. And that's because of the orbit of specifically the outer planets that have much longer orbits. You don't see them for instance, we're going to be talking about Jupiter first. You see Jupiter once every 12 years. The Jupiter return is once every 12 years. So it's not that often. So you're going to notice it when it comes around if you're paying attention and if you know what to look for. And so, what's going to be happening is that it actually already started, and I already have some really good proof. I talked to someone again about this. So Jupiter moved into Pisces on December 28th of last year, and I'll even say from personal experience, it was right around that day I felt a serious shift. And I'm not just saying that because I'm an astrologer. I had the way that I approached things changed. The communications I was getting from people changed. The research I was doing changed. I mean, everything had shifted. And in my particular instance, I'm actually Pisces. Now, and in my birth chart, I have Jupiter in Pisces. So for me, this is very familiar. Again, what I was just talking about before is that if you're seeing something in the daily transit that matches your birth chart, you're going to say, oh, this is like very familiar to me because you live with it every day. So anyway, so that entered Pisces on the 28th of December, and it's going to go through May 10th of this year. So it's a pretty large time period. And so what we're going to have happen in there is, first of all, Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces, which means that that's where Jupiter wants to be. Jupiter wants to be in one of 2 places. It's either Pisces or Sagittarius, and that it rules both of those 2 signs. So when Jupiter comes into Pisces, what that means is that you have Pisces at full force. Jupiter was not in Pisces, then Pisces is, it's just doing its own thing. But when you have that support from the ruling planet, you have some serious Pisces power. And on top of that, Neptune is also in Pisces right now. And Neptune is the co-ruler of Pisces. So this does not happen very frequently. This is really good. I mean, you have the ruler and the co-ruler in its proper sign. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. So what that means is basically full. I mean, if I could say more than 100%, I would. But let's just say full Pisces power starting on the 28th of December, going through May 10th of this year. So what that means, again, it's always dualistic. So there's two sides to everything. And so what you have is on the positive side, Pisces, again, it's the wise sign. It's the sign of wisdom. It's a sign of the dream world. It's the sign of caring for other people, paying attention, sensitivity, all these things. So I would expect to be seeing a huge push in our community right now. People, light worker community, people, starseed, indigo children, whatever, all these types of things. I'm expecting a big boost to help us. We need a little bit of a boost to help us out here. And that's the boost we've been waiting for, Kathy. It's a really big deal. So anything to do with the dream world to having to do with wisdom, we're getting some serious assistance from that. Now, on the other side, Pisces is, again, like I mentioned before, it can also be a tyrannical sign. So Pisces, the tyrant, on the other side. And, in terms of what I would suggest is to pay attention to oppressive systems, because we're also going to be feeling a lot of that. And we are, in my opinion, we have been actually.
Oh, absolutely. See what's going on in Australia and Austria and yeah.
Right. So, that's going to get a boost too, I believe, unfortunately, because it might probably going to vacillate back and forth.
But can it be the other way when people, when you say people rising up and speaking out and standing up for themselves?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and using the wisdom to do it, and, understanding laws of sovereignty and things like that, is that, we have our own human laws and all these things that are above systems. Yeah, it's both. It can be both at the same time. They can flip-flop. It can be either or. So just the important thing is to know the possibilities that exist within that realm. It's on both sides. It's the tyranny aspect, and strong tyranny too, again, because this is Pisces at full power, or I should say, a lot of wisdom and high level spirituality pulling from the dream world 100%, which also means, spiritual guides and all these great things, assistance coming to earth, things to help us, divine things, entities coming to help us. Okay, and then it's coming back actually October 28th this year, going through December 20th of this year as well. That's the second pass. So during those periods, again, be looking out for the things that I was talking about. And if you happen to have, well, and again, it's something that, if you know your birth chart and you know the positioning of what that's going to do for your own natal chart, then it's either personally, it can help you. It can also be a challenge, or it can be both. And it depends on the aspects and the angles and all these things in your birth chart. Okay, and then let's see, in May, Jupiter moves into Aries. So during the period, the two times that Jupiter is moving into Pisces, it's going to be in Aries. So when Jupiter is in Aries, so what is that? Let's see, May 11th through October 27th, I guess. During that period, I would expect a pretty big confrontational energy. Really like a big, broad spectrum confrontational energy. And then it's going to be reverted back to where it was starting December 28th of 2021, which is, again, that's the wisdom aspect, the helpful spiritual, high-level spirituality. Okay, anything that you want to add with that, Kathy? Or
no. But when you're doing, energy work and you understand that, like you were saying, May 11th through October 27th can be confrontational, but you can also give a lot of energy to all the light workers.
Oh yeah, that's going to be
utilize that confrontation.
Oh yeah, and that's going to be happening. You know, I already feel it personally. I mean, I feel like I'm actually being assisted,
Mhm.
by an invisible force, that's how astrology works. That's how it's always worked, and of course by my friends and coworkers and things like that, and people I work with, that we're all helping each other too. But it's coming from all angles, and it's never just one. Usually, it's not just one thing.
Mhm.
And even within the good aspects, there's many ways it can move within that. It might be heavy on the wisdom and not as heavy on the sensitivity, or it might be vice versa. It could be, just to know. The best way to do it is to know all of the options, so that way when you see it happen, you can pin it and say this is what it was, or this is the reason
Mhm.
why.
When you were doing my chart, and he really is good, guys. You should call him and talk to him about it. We talked about like when you're and many people are doing this. They're looking for their divine mates, and how do I know if this is the right person for me, and blah blah blah. And you were talking about the 30, 60, 90-day rule. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, okay, I'm gonna start with 90, I think. So 90 degrees, for each day of the year, it's a degree is equivalent to a day. So what that means is a 90-degree angle to your birthday it's called a square. And square is, again, it's not just bad, it's both. And I just actually went through my square to my natal sun recently, and guess what? And this is the thing, is that it wasn't until after it happened that I realized what happened, because I said, wow, this is ridiculously powerful. What is going on right now? And then when I looked, or when I paid attention, I said, okay, yeah, I just went through my square. Of course, that's what it is. So with a square, if you're talking about, are we talking about matches specifically about, okay, with other people? All right. So you can actually you can even do the calculation yourself if you want. Obviously, I'd be happy to do it for you guys if that's what you're looking for with astrology. But 90 days before your birthday or 90 days after your birthday is a square, and that's going to it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be exceptionally rocky. It's like a roller coaster, up and down. You're going side to side. It's really wild. It's a really wild ride when you go through a square. But it's also really good for information coming in, because it gives you a perspective that you would not normally ever have, because it's a perspective that you don't even want to spend time in, because it doesn't feel good. So if you're talking about a 90-degree or 90-day before or after your birthday, just be aware that it's going to be good and bad, and you can't separate them. You're going to feel both of them. So it's very powerful. It's very interesting, and it's like a very curious thing. You can't not do it. You can't not pay attention to it. You can't look away. I'll put it that way. If there's someone's a square to you, you just can't. You are transfixed by this person. So that's a lot of the appeal for that. But it's also, they're going to put you on a roller coaster. So you better be ready for that if you guys want to go into that, to the 90-degree. The 60-degree is generally
This
considered
is your birthday to birthday, so this is your sun sign, and it would have nothing to do with your rising or moon.
well, right, and that in this instance. But you can also use it to see how is the moon responding, or how is my ascendant responding. You can use it for any body at all.
Okay.
Astrology is limitless. You can project anything, and depending on what you're trying to accomplish and look for, then that's when it makes sense, if you can identify that, to figure out what it is. Okay, so what it is, 60 degrees is called a sextile. It's a gift. It's like a gift. That's the best word I can have for it, use for it. And it's going to feel really good. It's easy. It feels good. Feels not pretty natural, and there's not a lot of bumps and stuff. So that's one I would say. I wouldn't really even say think twice about it. Yeah, I would say green light for a 60-degree, or 60 days before or after your birthday. I'd say green light for that, at least initially. And since the natal suns are the strongest, it's going to carry the most energy. So I would say I would support that one for sure. And then a 30-day, 30-degree before or after is it's really splitting. It's kind of it's really getting split. The smaller angles are not generally as powerful because they just don't. They're so close. It's just, you know, again, it's physics. So if some, well, okay, I should put it that way. But if you have an angle that's a larger angle, you have more energy coming in. It's a longer distance to travel to get to that meeting point. Whereas if you have a closer angle, it's much less of a distance. That's really what I'm talking about. So for 30 degrees, I haven't spent a lot of time with that. I do spend some time with actually a 33-degree angle. You guys can look at that one if you want. That's one that, again, though, I feel like it's 50-50. So if you wanted to do that, look 30 or 33 before, 30, 33 after, and see how you feel if you can meet a person during that time. But out of all of those, you know, in terms of if you want smooth sailing, I would go with 60.
Yeah, but
sure.
would you do the, you know, like 60, 63, you know?
Oh yeah, you can do.
Or after?
Yeah, you can do, you know, right out of the gate, I would say 57 to 63 in that region. It gives you about 7 days. But like I said before, sometimes the applying is stronger than the separating. But, you know, again, it's just you have to work with it a little bit and see what makes sense to you, really.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've got one more thing, Kathy. I really need to get to it. It's the most important one, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Okay, so we got about 7 minutes, I guess. All right, so really the last event that I want to highlight is a seriously big event. Okay, so what's going to be happening is Pluto is going to be in its return. Now, Pluto, first of all, let me just say this. Pluto was demoted a while back to, you know, not a planet, a planetoid, essentially. The more that I spend time looking at Pluto, the more that I think it's actually Nibiru. So for people who are interested in the Sumerian mythology, I would really encourage you to pay attention to that. When you look at Pluto and you read about Pluto, I would be thinking about Nibiru personally. This is the massive planet that's affecting the orbits of Neptune and Uranus. That's past their orbits. It's not something the size of Pluto that's going to do that. And it's not. I actually don't think it's visible. I think it's in the invisible spectrum, which is why scientists are having such a hard time. But it's out there. It's out there. Okay, so the orbit of Pluto, and by the way, okay, I'm going to refer to it as Pluto just because it's referred to as Pluto in astrology, so we'll go with that for now. But Nibiru has been called the destroyer of worlds. I think in several different texts, actually, in cultures. I think Zecharia Sitchin actually said it quite a few times. And it's just really interesting because Pluto is described as the destroyer. Also, it's the destroyer and the transformer. It's actually both. So we'll get back to that in a second. But Pluto returns to the same spot it was in the sky. It only happens once every 248 years. It's a very rare event. This is an exceptionally rare event. No one alive has seen this. You know, by the way, that's a
What
serious.
date is that?
Well, it's actually coming. Well, actually, here, let me say this first, Kathy. The last time that it was in the position it's going to be in this year was July 4th, 1776. Okay, we know that was the inception of the United States. So heads up to everyone that we're going to be seeing a serious shift happening. It's going to be big, very powerful planet. Okay, so this is coming in February. It's February. I've seen February 20th, 22nd, somewhere right in there. And what's important to note about that is that that's also the very beginning of Pisces. So, and what else did we just see with Pisces? You know, when we were talking about Jupiter. Jupiter just entered Pisces, and it's there with Neptune, ruler and co-ruler. So Pluto is, I mean, there's all these things happening with related to Pisces, is what I'm trying to point out. And again, going back to what we were saying before, that you have the positive and negative aspects to that. But anyway, February 20th or 22nd, then it's going to come back for a second pass on July 11th. And then the last one is on December 28th, 2022, which, by the way, you know, since we're matching up things a lot here, is that's the day that Jupiter entered Pisces in 2021. So you see all these concordances, and that's how astrology works, is they line up a lot of times perfectly so that it really hammer home the point that this is what is going to be happening. Like, everyone pay attention to the Pisces energy, pay attention
Okay,
to
so
Pluto.
now we've got the other side wanting to push through the Great Reset and this digital shutdown, global shutdown. Now, because they do pay attention to planets and stars, possibility of those 3 dates that they may push that idea and that concept through?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, if that's, if people are following that type of story. I would also say, well, let me say this too, is that Mars is going to be within 6 degrees of Pluto. So this is, it's pretty dangerous, to be honest, guys. I can't really sugarcoat this. Mars is, it's the warrior, and Pluto's the destroyer. So there's something really massive coming, and we're just going to have to see exactly what that is. Could be what
And
you're
it can
talking
be enlightenment, that's the whole thing. That's what we've been working on. And that energy has not hit the planet yet.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And this has not happened since the inception of the United States. So
wow.
It's coming back for a second round. It is a reset. It's going to be a destruction event and a transformation event, because that's what Pluto represents. And it's got Mars right next to it within 6 degrees. So it's going to have a lot of that militant quality to it to really, really push it through. I mean, it's not going to be hard at all. It's going to be very smooth pushing it. It's not going to be clean, I don't think, either. But, and then I just want to highlight too is that, let's see first. Okay, so 2008. This is really interesting to me. Was the first year that Pluto entered Capricorn, and that was also the year that everything started to change. I'll just speak for myself personally, that my spiritual journey started in 2008, and the person I first learned astrology from, Santos Bonacci, his journey started in the same year as mine. A lot of other people, things started to get tossed up in that year. And I think I know why now. I think it was Pluto, the influence of Pluto. The other thing, Kathy, I'd be watching out for is that it's in Capricorn. Pluto's in Capricorn. And so that can indicate the fall of potentially public figures, a pretty inglorious fall, I'll put it that way, because Capricorn, exactly. Now, Capricorn is talking about career and achievement and stuff like that. So people who have achieved, and of course not everyone, I'm just select people, I would be saying, people who have achieved high status and things like that. We might be seeing some fall of some very prominent figures in the world.
So we're talking about, say, for example, the people on the WEF, the World Economic Forum, that really are creating all this mess. They may go down. Is that what you're saying? This is a good possibility during this time where, they're caught, tried, and found wanting.
I think it's the best chance the past 248 years. Yeah, in my opinion. I mean, to be honest, we could also be talking about a natural disaster. I'm not trying to scare people, but there's I think we're long overdue for that. Not that I want to see it.
But when you're doing energy work, though, you can do it to calm it down beforehand, so that doesn't happen. So instead of having a big blow up, the Mother Earth can actually ratchet that energy. But if you know ahead of time that, this energy in these days are coming, now that gives us the tools and the ammunition to neutralize it and to work on it.
Yeah, I agree with that. We should always be proactive. And it could also be, it could be an extraterrestrial event as well. I personally been waiting for that for a while, because I asked the question. People who know me, they know I ask this question every day. It's like, where's the assistance? You're going to watch all of your children suffer like this, and like, is it a game? Are you not here? Is anyone home? Are you not watching over the people you care about? Well, that's a question I have every day. It's a very big existential question, but I'd like to see an extraterrestrial event personally, to get some assistance here.
A benevolent one, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely a good one. Yep.
And I agree with you. And I am actually really tired of seeing these people on social networks saying, oh, the galactic, blah, blah, blah. They said, they're taking care of this so you don't have to do it. And I'm going, oh my God, that's a distraction. They're telling you, I'm going to do it. Don't do nothing because I've got it handled. And then they're not doing anything.
Oh yeah, and we always need to give support. I agree, Kathy. Even if someone's doing a great job, give a hand, help them out too. Get your energy in there, pushing for positive. I agree. We all have to always be proactive. And then, I just want to get two last things in. It take me like 15 seconds because they're important. So also on February 20th, we're going to be having Saturn in Aquarius, and Saturn rules Aquarius. So again, this is Aquarius at full power. In addition, and Aquarius is the one pushing the humanitarian agenda, in terms of like, let's get people to a better place, let's get knowledge out there, let's get inventions out there to help people. Some of that stuff might have to do with maybe possibly transhumanism or possibly the technology, the continuation of the technology revolution, things like that. But Aquarius is all about helping people out. So that's to me, that's a pretty good thing. And then the last one is Chiron in Aries. Now, Chiron is called the Wounded Healer. And it's an asteroid that's way out in the outer solar system. And it's the greatest gift and it's the greatest weakness. So we're seeing a lot of intensity. We've got a lot of Mars represented. We've got a lot of Aries represented. We've got the explosive transformation from Pluto coming in. And I would expect some, I know, I really don't want to see it happen, but just let's all be aware of anytime you have Mars in there and Aries in there in a favorable position, you're going to be seeing some real intensity. So just everyone, be ready for that, and always do the best you can. All of us too.
Not that I want to cut you off, but we don't have much time left. So if people want to get a chart done and all that yummy stuff, and you're also an animal communicator.
I can. I have, I kind of do it in a natural way. The quieter your mind is, the more that you can communicate in the animal world, and they pick up on that. They want to know they can trust you. The more telepathic you are, the more chance you're going to have an animal really being able to communicate with you. I'll put it that way too. But actually, speaking of which, Kathy, I know for a fact that at least so far, dogs and cats, they also have their birth charts, and it affects them equally. That's something I've done several times too. So if people want to look at that, if you've got a pet or something, you want me to look at that, I can do a chart for your pet. And in addition to that, like you mentioned, birth charts, relationship matching. I do business application things. If you have a business or you're trying to maybe select dates, things of that nature. Really anything astrology at all, I can figure it out for you. I also teach astrology.
20 seconds.
Okay. Yeah. Find me on Facebook, Dave Petrella. Instagram is Dave Petrella 12. If you want, you can send me an email, davepetrella@hotmail.com. And my last name is spelled P like Peter, E-T-R-E-L-L-A.
Well, there we go. Oh, God, you're going to have to come back. This hour went by.
Sure, yeah.
And on that note, this is Kathy Bilski, the Quantum Leap Let Light Unite show on UPRN Radio. And this is January 7th, 2022. Have a great weekend. Be very safe and have a joyful weekend. Good night, everybody. See you next week. Night, Dave.
Good night, guys. Thank you.
Hello, this is Discover, and we take customer service very seriously. We know that if you have a question or concern about your credit card, that's a serious matter, and you need to talk to a real person about it. So we offer around-the-clock access to seriously talented representatives in the USA. Again, it's a serious endeavor. The only funny thing about it is Bob. If you call us and Bob answers, you're in for a treat. Get 100% US-based customer service and talk to a real person day or night. Discover. Exceptionally common sense.
Sandra, nice to see you. Ross Smith, nice to have you back. Kevin, nice to see you here. And let's see here. I didn't get a chance to snowblow today, little Marky Spender. Some of us work for a living. the gorgeous Char Naughton. Welcome back. And who else is here? Pete O'Hara, the Michael Leger, everyone. The Michael Leger. Ian Herndon, good to see you. Damian K, Project Blue Book, and B, welcome. The gorgeous Teresa, thank you for joining us. Daryl Zernick, nice to see you as we continue on with roll call here. Bonjour, Jean-Paul. It's been a while. How you doing? Comment ça va? Hi, Sparkles. Nice to have you here. All right, moving on. Elliot D, I think I said you already. Navajo, nice to see you. The stunning Xochitl Paez. The Quick, how you been? Good to have you back. And there's Uncle Dale in his power stash. If you're in Austin, Texas, and you see Uncle Dale rub his power stash for good luck right through tax time. All right, moving on here. Who else has joined us? Jerry Weisky, welcome to our channel. And I think we're caught up. There's awesome Arlene Adkins-Zell. Spooky Morales and his trumpeter here. Thank you for everyone who has hit subscribe. We're at 14,500. Here we go with the show. Horns up. British Columbia, to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire, check out our swag as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Yes, it is almost time to blow the horn as the Woo train is about to roll with our Keith Andrews of the ET Connection. We will get to that momentarily. Get your questions ready. Well, by the way, if you're in the chat rooms, put them in capital letters. Then in hour 3, we will bring you a story from the swamp with our good buddy Swamp Dweller. The fedora-wearing John Hudson has the latest in UFO news. We got Shirky Poo's news and the thought of the day of a jam-packed show tonight. And, of course, near the beginning of each month, we are joined by the man, the myth, and the legend, our Keith Andrews. He's an ET contactee who comes in once a month to discuss the purposes of aliens, ET contact, and what the heck are they doing here on Earth. Keith is not only an ET contactee, also highly intuitive. His gifts have helped him help others for more than 30 years. Keith proclaims he has been in touch with more than 50 extraterrestrial species since childhood. He's a near-death experiencer as well, my good friend, our Keith Andrews. Happy New Year to you, buddy. How you been?
Happy New Year to you and everybody else as well. It's been a bit of a shall we say, hectic start.
It has.
We're still breathing, so.
Well, that's a good sign. That's a good sign. I want to announce to our audience here, if you something, if you don't mind. I found out during the show last night, I actually found out that I have been asked to speak in February 25th through 27th at UFO Con 2022 in San Francisco, California. And
yeah, I do hope you accepted.
Of course I did. Of course I did. When Lorian Fenton calls, I usually will always take that call. Actually, it's 100% of the time I will take that call. And Lorian has asked me to come down. But for our Spaced Out Radio listeners, there may be another surprise to that. Because I strongly believe there may be the opportunity of Lynn Wallington, our weekend host, also speaking at that event as well. So February 25th through 27th, we're going to be at UFO Con 2022. It's UFOCon2022.com. You can get your tickets right now, and you have an opportunity to hang out with myself and potentially, and I'll wrap this up by the weekend, and we'll find out, Lynn Wallington speaking there as well. So sorry, Keith, for jumping in on your event. and your show.
You do recall this is your show, but thanks for the apology. Anyway.
I know, but you know I love you, man, and I hate taking up your time. I do. I had to, steal that 2 minutes there. How was your Christmas and New Year's? Was it good? Was it fun? I know you got to spend it with your loving sons.
I did so. The night Christmas didn't go as well as I would have liked. I mean, it was a lot of fun with the family, but there were complications that I personally ran into. New Year's was the same as every New Year's. I mean, heck, even when I had the stroke a few years ago, I was out of the hospital to come home and play Dungeons and Dragons on New Year's Eve.
Well, it's very true, very true. But you're not really a guy for the holidays, are you? You're not a holidays kind of guy.
I do like Christmas, but do I spend a lot of time around it? No. The reason being, I grew up knowing what was under the tree, so I found it much more enjoyable to surprise other people.
So you like the role of Santa Claus?
Honestly, I actually do. I mean, I won't even let Christmas songs and Christmas movies go on in the house until December 1st.
Me either. We got that very, very equal on our parts. Well, let's get to it, man. Let's get to it. I mean, for people who may not know you, we have to reintroduce you each time we are here. And you are somebody who is a lifelong ET contactee. What's it like growing up in that type of environment?
Well, it was, in a nutshell, it was a nightmare. I mean, if you think about it, I grew up in a small town, military base, right in the middle of the Bible Belt of BC. Being abducted, dealing with psychic phenomenon, and that was just normal for me. So, of course, throw the MyLabs in on top of that, and now we've got a problem. So, for anybody that's going, well, I feel a little out of kilter or a little out of sync with people, I can relate to them all too well. The one saving grace of the whole thing was that Dad confirmed everything on his deathbed. So was it a trying time? The answer is absolutely yes. Didn't get very close to people because the few I did get close to, I'd usually get hurt by, as in bullied, that sort of thing. There were a few that stood out as not being that way, but the majority of them were not fun to live around.
Growing up in central British Columbia like you did, and then, kind of moving all around because your father was in the military, was there ever talk of UFOs, ETs?
Well, that's the funny part. Number one, it was Western BC, but much more importantly, in the 12 years we were on the island, Dad never came up for transfer once. Right. I actually didn't move around a whole lot.
Well, you were lucky then. Well,
Lucky in one sense. On the other hand, I ended up spending a lot of that time in MyLabs. But was there ever any talk about UFOs? Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, my house, you go to the end of the airport runway, go about 100 yards, you hit the tree line. Our house was on the other side of that tree line. So you saw a lot of really weird things.
Tell me.
But we talked about it a lot.
Okay, so what was one of those family discussions like when you were talking about UFOs and aliens?
Well, I believed wholeheartedly in them, and of course, because of the fact I could see them, I would try talking about them, and I'd immediately get told to keep that sort of thing quiet because people won't accept it well. And as it turned out, Dad was right on that one. They didn't. I was always at odds with Mom and Dad because I'd say this was real, this is what's going on, and they'd tell me it was all in my imagination. Net result, I spent a lot of time talking to shrinks. Which worked out well and left me to be able to look at me and not worry about them. But it wasn't like we would sit down and go, "Oh, here's what the drive looks like." I mean, the fact that I knew how my older brother had a phenomenal mind, and even he would look at it and go, "No, you don't know what you're talking about." But when I laid out the schematics for a couple of people for the oscillatory densification for the OTE drive, which stands for oscillatory densification of tri-transdupation electropolarity, it took about 2 hours to explain it because I'm not a scientist. My dad used to he'd kind of brush things aside and tell me to keep it quiet and don't talk about it. Mom pretty much did the same thing. So it wasn't really until I got a lot older. Actually, in all fairness, when I met you, I had only been really out in public about what I was going through for a couple of years.
Well, you know what? It's one of those things, Keith, where, you have to find your own comfortability with the subject. And I think for a lot of people out there, the big problem that we have is we want to be able to talk about these and our own experiences, but we don't want other people to know. This is where we seem to get into, the emotion of it, the embarrassment of the subject that I've seen UFOs or I have seen aliens, Keith. I mean, how do we get through that fear of talking about this subject when the world is so critical?
Well, I'm happy to say one of the ways of getting used to that is, quite frankly, by coming on this show, and there's a couple others that are really good at it. But I find a lot of people that come on here seem to open up a lot more because, quite frankly, on the Spaced Out Radio here, you have a tendency of taking everybody and going, okay, that's what you're going through. Well, we're not going to talk down. Let's see if we can find an answer for you. Most people, they brush it off and just tell you you're absolutely off your nut. But it really does take finding that one person. And this is why I tell people, if you don't get an answer from me here, on any of my videos, you'll find a whole list of ways of getting a hold of me. Drop a question. I'll do my best.
Well, we'll get to the questions here momentarily as they start to build up. But for you, my friend, as you have kind of gone through this entire process and built up your strength to be public, how do you deflect the negativity?
Oh, that's easy. You just tell people, look, I wasn't telling you to convince you or to prove to you what was going on. This is just what I go through. You get to have your experience. You get to have your opinion. If they get really bad and really, really aggressive with me, I'll usually, if they catch me in the right mood, I'll just look at them and go, do you feel better now? And of course, they look at you and go, what do you mean? I says, well, the way you're treating me makes me feel like garbage, so I'm hoping it's doing something for you. But admittedly, I've got more of a sarcastic and shall we say, cynical outlook on life at this point.
Oh, I think we all do.
Most people do.
Yeah, I think we all do. Let's just be honest right now. But for those of us who are ET contacts, and that we want to be able to have good dialogue and conversation about this in order to learn about what we've gone through, where does one start?
Well, you start with one issue, and that is accepting the fact that first and foremost, it is possible what you're going through. It's not just in your imagination. But while you're doing that, remember to look for that one piece of information or that one experience that may derail the whole thing. You always look for the logical answer first. But finding people that can corroborate what you've been through is absolutely imperative to really coming to terms with it. Otherwise, you're just questioning, is this my imagination or what?
Very true. But how do we tell imagination and dreams from reality?
I actually asked that question of a number of professionals. And the invariable answer was, if you're looking at a memory, Okay, if the emotion is, number one, age appropriate, and the emotion is situationally apparent, then you're looking at, in all likelihood, a real memory. And again, when you're trying to describe it, if you're remembering something from your childhood, like when it first happened with me, and I started explaining what I was looking at, I remember being in a room with a wall full of wheels that were, whirring wheels and dials and flashing lights. And that's all it was to me. It wasn't until I got much older that I realized what I was sitting in was the inside of a computer mainframe room. And all of those were computers all the way around. I'd never seen a computer at that time.
Well, I mean, hey, it's what you do. It's what you do. I mean, you have to be able to learn and advance at your own way. I mean, that's actually a good point there, Keith. Let me delve into that here for a second, because for a lot of people out there, Keith, they don't know where to start. They don't know where to get information from. Don't know who to trust. I mean, I think for most experiencers, we have to realize that learning about your ET contact is a marathon. It's not a race. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon that is going to take years, decades, and even if you don't have years and decades left, it is going to take time to try and figure things out, isn't it?
It absolutely is. This is something that, people go, well, I want proof. And society has gotten to the point where it is almost a question of instant gratification is required. Right, but it doesn't happen that way with the contact. I mean, the reality is it can be once or it can be dozens of times that you go through it. And I feel for the people that go through it once, because they're left sitting there going, well, was that real or what's the situation? I just got a different way of dealing with things, that's all. But it's a very long, drawn-out process, and the best thing I can suggest to people is if you've had an experience and you cannot quantify it really, do your best to write it down on paper, as much detail as you can, including the time and the date that you were writing it down. But you write it as soon as possible, because down the road you may be able to look back at it and fill in bits and pieces.
You like to profess to people to keep a journal by their bed.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, you and I have been doing this for almost 7 years that you've been on the air.
We'll be going on 7 years in 2 months, I think.
I do believe so. And I want to ask you, I've never had a journal beside my bed. I just know that if I dream aliens, something has happened, because I don't remember my dreams. I'm not that guy.
Right.
That's how I know, and that's what triggers. But, I mean, I know I'm being wild and crazy about it, because I should be there to document what is going on. What is the importance, if you feel you're being contacted, to have a diary or some sort of notebook beside your bed?
That is strictly for your own benefit. Okay, that's so that if it happens today, and then a month or two down the road you have another dream, then you've got something to compare it with that is written in real time, as in right after it got written down the first time. When you write it down the second time, you can compare them and see if you're dealing with either with the same race, or you might pick up a different detail. And you can put it all together. It's kind of like trying to put a jigsaw puzzle together without actually knowing what the final puzzle looks like.
Right. Okay. So if that is happening, and we're trying to find the pieces to the puzzle, where do we find the pieces?
Well, that's where the dreams come in. Okay, the dreams are the funny thoughts that you may have that it's like, why was I thinking about that? Well, I'm just going to mark that down. Right. But those pieces will show up sometimes in the weirdest places. Like, you might be sitting in a restaurant, and I've had this happen, where I'm sitting in a restaurant and something catches my attention, and it's like, okay, I've seen that image before. So I'll make a quick note of it, and I'll add it to my journal later. Right. But it is simply for self-actualization. It is not so that you can go out and all of a sudden try and write a bestseller, because I'll tell you, most people that go through this have no interest in being publicly noticed. Matter of fact, the greater number of them, from my experience, would just as soon not have other people know.
Do the aliens want us to know what's going on?
That's sort of a mixed bag. Part of it is yes, because they know that mankind's civilization has hit that breaking point again, where they're either going to get off this planet and they're going to get along, or they're going to tear themselves apart. Okay, and it's really a toss-up right now. It's not looking good for them. But I mean, from an alien...
Hey, Randy, what you doing?
Oh, hey, Dave. I'm just making a list of things that make me feel really, really good.
Wearing Bombas socks.
Trust me, that's number one on my list. Bombas socks feel so good because we use the smartest design and best materials, making them the most comfortable socks ever.
Plus, because socks are the number one most requested clothing item in homeless shelters, we donate a pair for every pair purchased, and that feels pretty good too.
To shop Bombas or learn more about how your purchase supports those experiencing homelessness, go to bombas.com/comfy and get 20% off your first purchase.
Whatever business you're in, growth isn't just about getting bigger. At ADP, we believe it's about getting stronger by turning data into insights so you can build teams that work as teams. By using our AI technology to help catch payroll errors before they're errors. And by keeping ahead of thousands of changing regulations so you can keep ahead of everything else. ADP helps businesses like yours grow stronger every day. ADP, HR, talent, time, and payroll.
Standpoint, this time period is a phenomenal study point, because the socioeconomic impact of what's going on around people right now is really opening the doors to new discoveries. I'm even noticing with a lot of the pictures that are coming out, people are getting more and more clear pictures. Now, I'm no video analyst, so when people send me, it's funny. I get people periodically, they'll send me a little video of a moving light and go, what ship is this? I haven't got a clue. You're talking about a spot of light, right? But sometimes people will send a picture of a ship, and it's just clear as a bell what it is.